Nina. Thanks so much for joining me today. As promised, I have another card featuring the Simon Says Stamp October 2016 card kit, and I'm going to be showing you how I use the adorable little squirrels to create this cute little sunset scene. I'm also going to be sharing with you a couple of ways that I did some of the techniques in this card, so let's get started. I'm starting off by planning where I'm going to want my little squirrels and the acorn that they're going to have in between them. You're also seeing a sentiment here along the top portion of the card. That's from one of the new stamp sets from Simon Says Stamp's Stamptember release. I'll have that linked in the video description, as well as the stamp set that I'm using here from the October 2016 card kit. I've mounted these images onto my Misty stamping tool, and I'm inking up the little squirrels with some cocoa ink from Hero Arts. I'm pressing this down good with my Misty, and then I'll go ahead and get the acorn mounted into my Misty as well. I'm inking this up with some paper bag ink from Altenew, and I'll go ahead and stamp that in between the adorable little squirrels. I'm going to move on to adding some shading to these images. You could leave them flat color as they are, but I wanted to add a little bit of graphic shading to them. I'm only going to be using one color of Copic for these squirrels, just adding some subtle shading where the areas that I think they would be the darkest around them, and I'm doing it in a very graphic style, where it's basically just some lines of color that have a very defined edge, so you can see where the shading meets up with the other color that's part of the squirrel. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm using a dark E marker here. For the acorn, I'm using some lighter E markers. I believe this one's E15. I'm adding some shading to the acorn, and then I'll also bring in a darker E marker. This is E39, adding that to some of the areas of the acorn, and I'll blend that out. Then for the top portion of the acorn, I'm using E39 for the base color. I'm coloring that paper bag completely with the E39, and then I'll add some shading with E29. And I really like how these two colors work together. Now for the grass underneath my little squirrels, I'm bringing in some YG markers. These are lighter YGs. And I'm creating grass by doing some quick flicks up towards the top of the paper. And I'm doing it along the line of where the squirrels are sitting. Then I'm going to extend that color. And that's going to create a little bit of foreground for them, and also give them a little bit of shadowing. I'll blend that out with a lighter YG marker. This is YG21. I'll add some lighter flicks in the background, and I'll go ahead and continue to blend this out. Then I decided I wanted to add some darker green, so I'm bringing in a darker YG marker. I don't remember what this color is, but I'll have it listed on the side of the screen for you. And then I'll go ahead and blend that out. After I've done my Copic coloring, I created some masks from some sticky notes, and I also used a piece of masking tape to mask off the bottom portion of this panel. I'm using some Wild Honey Distress ink to go ahead and ink blend a background for my little squirrels. I'm using a fairly light hand, so that way I make sure I don't wreck the little masks that I've created with my sticky notes, and I'll just continue to blend that up towards the top. When I've gotten the Wild Honey blended towards the top, I'm taking some fossilized amber now and adding that along the bottom portion, focusing that mostly around the squirrels because I want that to be slightly darker, so that way it fades up and gets lighter as it gets towards where the sentiment will end up being. Here you can see the blending all finished. I'm taking some stitched scallop border dies from Simon Says Stamp. These are brand new from their Stamptember release, and I'm laying them down onto my paper inside my Big Shot machine. I'm going to put the cutting plate back on top, and then I'll run this through, and that creates a beautiful, nice stitching border around the edges of my panel. I'm going to repeat this for all four sides, and you'll notice that the scallops on this particular die are fairly large. There are actually 3 of these scallop dies in the set, both a medium and a small size, so the other 2 are slightly smaller than this particular die. Once I have the die cutting finished, I'm taking my sentiment, and I've mounted it into my Misty tool, and I've masked off the bottom portion of the sentiment. So right now I'm only inking up the thankful part. And I'm just using some masking tape to go ahead and mask off those letters. You could stamp this in one whole color, but I wanted to have 2 colors. So I'm stamping the first one in Red Royal ink from Hero Arts, and then the second color I'm going to use paper bag. But this time I'm masking off the word thankful, so I'm only inking up the word for you. So now my sentiment will have 2 different colors, and it really adds a nice bit of interest to this card. Next, it's time to create our card base. I'm using some Nina Desert Storm cardstock. This is the 100-pound version, and I'll go ahead and fold this into an A2 sized card. So it's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and the scoring board that I used was the Martha Stewart scoring board. I just used a bone folder. Here you can see I'm using that bone folder to go ahead and crease the edge of my scored card. I'm taking a piece of the pattern paper that's included in the card kit. This is from the Lawn Fawn Perfectly Plaid for Fall 6x6 paper pad. I've cut down this strip, and I'll go ahead and put this along the bottom portion of my card, and I'll just trim off the excess with my Tim Holtz scissors. I'm mounting this card into my Big Shot machine along with a stitch border die from My Favorite Things. This is a double stitch line border die, and I'm just using this along all the edges of my card just to give the card base a little bit of interest. This helps it from being too plain, and I really think adding details like this to your cards really steps them up a notch. So here you can see I'm adding this along all the edges, and I'll go ahead and repeat this until I add that stitching detail along all 4 sides. Now I'm taking my panel here and I've put some fun foam on the back side of it, and I'm mounting this onto my A2 sized card. You can see how that pattern paper really finishes off the card nicely. Now I also want to show you how I created this beautiful baker's twine coming down from the card. You can see it's in a nice beautiful wavy form, and I created that by using some glue, and I'll go ahead and show you. Because of course twine is very loose and flowy, it wouldn't naturally stay in that position. I've tied it across the top portion of my card, and I'm putting a bit of liquid glue underneath the bow. That's going to hold the bow in place and allow us to make sure that it doesn't shift as we go to do the next step. You want to make sure that this bow dries before moving on. Here you can see I've got this now that I've let that dry, and I'm trimming down the baker's twine ends to be a little bit shorter than how I had them. Now to create that fun embellishment with this baker's twine, I'm taking this and I'm kind of warping it into the position that I'm going to want it to be. I'm just testing this out to see how it looks and see if it's even enough, and then I'll go ahead and lay this back down so that way I can go ahead and adhere this to my card. I'm just testing it to make sure I like how it's looking. Now I'm taking some liquid glue and I'm putting it onto my finger. I'm going to smush it in between my fingers, get my fingers all sticky, and I'm going to run this baker's twine through the glue. That's going to give this a little bit of tack, and it's also going to hold its shape. I'm now going to go ahead and lay this down onto my card in the shape that I liked it in, and I'll go ahead and push that down into the paper. Now to hold it in place and reinforce it a little bit, I'm going to add some liquid glue in just a couple of areas, one along the bottom portion, and then I'll also put some liquid glue along the top portion as well. And you don't have to do this for the entire piece because we've got that glue onto the baker's twine itself, but I like adding just a little bit in a couple of strategic spots just to make sure it holds its shape. And I'll go ahead and repeat this on the other side as well. I'll go ahead and repeat that same application of the glue onto the baker's twine, and then I'll go ahead and warp it into the shape that I want it to be. So I hope you've enjoyed this look at the Simon Says Stamp October 2016 card kit. I absolutely love the fun little images that are included in this set, and I hope you'll be able to pick yours up over at the Simon Says Stamp blog. If you've never heard of Simon Says Stamp card kits, I'll have some information over at my blog that you can go ahead and find out more. I'll also have links to the products that I used, including the 2 stamp sets that were featured. If you enjoyed this video, here's another one you might like featuring the new Simon Says Stamp October 2016 card kit. Please give this video a big thumbs up, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you can connect with me on social media at Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube, as well as my blog. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you again soon.